Hello, welcome to the Stitchopedia and Jessie at Home. In this Stitchopedia video, I'm going to show you how to do two different decreases. And the reason there's two different decreases that I'm showing you is because one works better when you're decreasing from one direction and one works better when you're decreasing from the other direction. Alright, so if you look at this little sample I have so far, you can see that there's a little difference between this set of decreases, and then as we go up here the decreases look a little different. That's because I started off with an odd number of stitches, and I did a decrease and then a single knit in the middle, and then the other decrease in the other direction on this side for a while. And then when I came up here, I moved myself down to an even number of stitches, and I placed my decreases right next to each other. Okay, so what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to show you how to do the two different decreases, and then we'll talk a little bit about why in this little section here things are a little wobbly on the left side. Here we'll talk about how that happens, and we'll talk about a little bit more. Oh, and I almost forgot. The yarn I am using is Red Heart Super Saver. Alright, and I am using size 10 or 6mm knitting needles. So, this sample is obviously made in stockinette stitch, which means we're knitting on the front side and we're purling on the back side, and I'm only doing my decreases on every other side here. So right now I'm at the point where I have a total of 12 stitches, and I'm just decreasing on both sides. But for now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 3 decreases on this side that are what you find in patterns labeled as knit 2 together. So I'll do 3 knit 2 togethers over here to show you that, and then I'll do 3 slip slip knits on this side to show you that. And when I do my last slip slip knit, I'm going to show you a little shortcut that I like to use, but I use it more often when I'm doing something like garter stitch, because it is the reason why things got a little wonky over here. It's a little bit quicker to make, but if you're doing a stocking knit stitch, it makes your stitches bend a bit like they do here. If you're doing a garter stitch though, they don't. You can't see that. Let's begin with the knit 2 together, which is usually done when you have your stitches that are veering towards the left into your decrease. It gives you this little straight line right next to it. So our knit 2 together, it is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. You have 2 stitches. Normally when you knit a stitch, you go in here to do your knitting. Instead we're going to go, instead of going into just 1 stitch, we're going back and we're going to go into 2 stitches, and then we're going to complete that knit stitch the same way we would have before. You yarn over and you pull that little loop through, and then you pull those 2 stitches right off your knitting needle. Now let's do that again. Knit 2 together. So there's 1, there's 2. We're going in the same direction we would have on a normal knit stitch. Yarn over, pull that loop through, and then slide those 2 stitches off. That's a knit 2 together. Let's show you that one more time. 1, 2, insert your needle, wrap your yarn around, pull that yarn through, and pull those 2 stitches off. And that is your knit 2 together. Okay? Now the other one is slip slip knit. And you start just like you would normally knit with 1 stitch, only you're not going to knit it. You're just going to go in as if you're going to knit and slip it onto your right needle, off the left and onto the right. And then you're going to do that again. You're going to go into the next stitch as if you're going to knit it, but you aren't knitting it. You're slipping it off of the left needle and onto the right. That's your slip slip part. Now here comes your knit part. You're taking your left needle and you're putting it in the front loops from left to right of those 2 stitches you just slipped. Now you're going to complete your knit stitch by wrapping your yarn around your right hand needle, pulling that loop through, and pulling those 2 stitches off. And that is a slip slip knit. So I'll show you that again. Insert your right hook into the next stitch as if you're going to knit, and slip it from the left onto the right. Insert your right, I said hook before, needle. Insert your right hand needle again as if you're going to knit, but instead of knitting, just slip that stitch from your left needle onto your right needle. Now you're going to knit into those 2 stitches by taking your left needle and inserting it through the front hooks from left to right, into the front loops from left to right, and you are now going to finish your knit stitch by wrapping your yarn around your right hand needle, pulling that through and sliding those stitches off. That is your slip slip knit. Now a slip slip knit can also be achieved in another way, which is sometimes called a knit 2 together through the back loop. So remember before when we knit 2 together we went this way and we knit the 2 together? Well, you can also knit 2 together through the back loop, which lines up your stitches in basically the same manner as a slip slip knit. So instead of going in this way, you are actually going to go from right to left through the back loops of those 2 stitches. Okay, so again, from right to left through the back loops of those 2 stitches. So now your right hand needle is behind your left hand needle. You're going to wrap your yarn around your right hand needle and pull that loop through, and that makes it still puts the 2 stitches that you just joined together, it still stacks them in the same order this way. But what I have found, like I said before, right here I was doing the knit 2 together through the back loop in place of the slip slip knit, and you can see how I have a really tight stitch and then a loose loopy and then a tight and then a loose loopy and a tight and a loose loopy, whereas when I'm doing the slip slip knit you see that a little bit but nowhere near as pronounced as when I did the knit 2 together through the back loop. So that's why when you're working stocking knit I definitely suggest doing the slip slip knit method on the left side here. You know, on the right side the knit 2 together is obviously always great. You see how nice and even that is, and on the left side it's not as nice, but it's definitely nicer using the slip slip knit when you're working in stocking knit. However, as I said, when you are working in garter stitch, which is something you do a lot for mitered squares, because you see with stocking knit the a lot of mitered squares are made in garter stitch. I've suddenly lost all my vocabulary. But when you're working in garter stitch, you can do the knit 2 together through the back loop, and you don't see this funkiness going on because you have all that texture that the garter stitch provides. And you can also do the knit 2 together through the back loop when you're doing something like a herringbone stitch. And basically what you might want to do is, if you have a pattern that includes a lot of slip slip knits and you want to try doing the knit 2 together through the back loop instead because you find it quicker and easier, go ahead and make yourself a little swatch and see. Do one with slip slip knit and one with knit 2 together through the back loop, and just see if it makes a difference. If the difference bothers you, see what makes you happy and go with that. You know, basically, as I always say, and pretty much, you know, everything yarn related, the important thing is that you're consistent and that you're happy. You choose a method, you stick to it, and you choose the method that makes you happy. So there you have it. I hope you have found that helpful and that I have helped demystify some of the decreases in knitting for you. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day.